Had things gone differently, our first encounter would have ended in blood. Yet, when the time came to save the world, you were the only one I'd consider partnering with. Black suits, the Zurath sun. My boots were caked in the thick red mud of the Brazilian rainforest, a miserable, clinging sludge that sucked at the soles with every step. I hated the jungle. The heat was a living thing, heavy and wet, wrapping around you like a shroud, and the noise, the incessant, vibrating, manic symphony of unseen insects was designed to fray the last threads of human patience. We were 200 kilometers from anything resembling civilization, operating in conditions that would make a conventional soldier quit. But we were the black suits. Quitting wasn't in the manual. Of course, Black Suits wasn't our official name. Our actual agency's designation was a long and boring list of official-sounding terms. But even inside said agency, the name given to us by the conspiracy theorists of the world sounded better, so we often used that name ourselves. My team, 3 agents, including myself, and 2 supports moved like shadows. We were ghosts, the kind of entity the world believed existed only in rumors, and that was precisely our strength. Our job was simple: eliminate the extraterrestrial threat, or capture it, and ensure the human populace remained blissfully unaware. The cosmic dance continued, but humanity was never invited to the floor. This particular threat was less an invasion, and more an interplanetary custody battle. We were hunting the Zurath, a former royal family from planet Latha. They were sleek, elegant humanoids, not monsters, but political exiles. Latha had undergone a bloody revolution. The new government, hungry for legitimacy and vengeance, wanted the Zurath family back for a public execution, parents and children alike. They were labeled fugitive criminals, but in our book, they were just refugees caught in a galactic power play. Our brief, however, was strictly diplomatic. Arrest them before they escaped Earth, thereby preventing an incident that could escalate into an unauthorized interstellar war right over our heads. Interplanetary incidents made paperwork an absolute nightmare, and my section chief had a notorious allergy to overtime. "Target ship confirmed," Analyst Harris whispered into the secure comm line, her voice tight with the humidity. "A repurposed cargo skiff, heavily shielded, currently cycling pre-flight sequence. ETA to launch, 15 minutes. 15 minutes. No drawn-out siege, no protracted negotiations. Just a rapid deployment, secure the assets, and extract. Hit hard, hit fast, get out." "Copy that, Harris. Team 3, we're going hot. Standard non-lethal application. We secure the family and disable the vessel. I want the parents in restraints, the children handled with kid gloves. Let's make this clean." I led the charge, the mud momentarily forgotten as my focus narrowed. The Zurath were holed up in a dilapidated, abandoned cocoa processing plant, a concrete skeleton swallowed by the jungle. The metallic hum of their hidden ship was almost painful, vibrating through the humid air. We breached the perimeter wall, moving into the main courtyard. My pulse was a steady, dull hammer against my ribs. This was the moment of truth. We saw the ship first. A teardrop-shaped vessel nestled precariously beneath a collapsed warehouse roof, its main ramp already descending. And there they were, the Zurath father, regal even in a torn cotton shirt, ushering his 2 pale-skinned, terrified children towards the ramp. The mother was securing a small, complex data cylinder to her wrist. "Black suits, stand down and surrender." I projected the command in clear Lathan tongue, amplified by my suit's helmet comms. The father froze. The mother turned, her large, almond eyes fixed on us with utter despair. It was the children's eyes, wide and silver, that hit me hardest. They looked exactly like the terrified human children I had seen in war-zone footage. Just children. This was why I took this job. To protect the innocent, whether they were from Earth or a planet 50 light years away. That's when the complications began. First, a blur. Black and blue lines passed in front of me, hitting my weapon so hard it snapped in two while flying out of my hands. My eyes followed the fast, whooshing object, finding a spear nailed to the ground. It vibrated for a second, then zoomed back the same direction it came from, a shadowy corner we never even noticed. Then, he stepped in, fully clad in armor that was a deep, iridescent black, sleek, and terrifyingly efficient. The suit wasn't bulky like ours. It was organic, almost liquid, flowing over a perfectly human frame. He moved with a devastating economy of motion, the spear now in his hands. A high-tech combat spear, a staff of crackling, violet energy. Danvers and Peterson reacted quickly, firing at him while flanking him from both directions. He dodged their energy blasts with quick, agile, zigzagging leaps until he was close enough to destroy Patterson's rifle. Danvers aimed to shoot, but the enemy pulled Patterson as a human shield, then pushed him towards Danvers, and at that moment of distraction, destroyed his rifle as well. "Melee!" I ordered, having already deployed my own paralyzing action baton. They followed. We attacked. 3 against 1. We released a flurry of fast, unpredictable strikes meant to overwhelm his defenses. If one went high, another one went low. If I hit from the front, one of them would strike from the back. During combat training, the instructor would often say, "You can have fancy moves, or you can have effective moves. You can't have both. Don't go dancing during a fight, or you'll just die looking like a dumbass." If that was a rule, then I guess we had just encountered the exception. We were fast, precise, efficient. He was simply better. He nonchalantly blocked or dodged every one of our strikes. Then, with incredible skill and precision, he jumped, spun midair, and threw 3 perfectly placed kicks, one on Danvers's leg, one on my side, and the last one on Peterson's chest. Before his feet touched the ground again, the 3 of us were already stumbling backwards in pain. I looked up and saw him raising his spear while pointing it at the floor. I knew something was coming. "Get down!" I screamed. But it was too late. The spear wasn't used to stab, it was used to project. A searing, focused wave of kinetic energy erupted from the tip, hitting the ground in a terrifying ripple effect. My 2 accompanying agents, Agent Danvers and Agent Peterson, were caught in the blast's immediate shockwave. They didn't even have time to scream. Their bodies were instantly thrown backward against the concrete wall, their advanced polymer suits crumpled like soda cans. Non-lethal? This was brutal. They were alive, thank God, but definitely out of the fight, twitching where they lay. Analyst Harris, positioned behind a defunct boiler, cried out in pain as the force wave reached her, shattering the boiler and sending shrapnel flying. The third party was working with blinding, calculated speed, clearing the field. I was the only one left standing, directly in the line of fire. The armored figure turned its attention fully on me, the violet spear pulsing ominously. I had microseconds. My training kicked in, not the tactical maneuvers, but the deep, desperate survival protocols. "Protocol 7 Delta," I hissed into the comms. My hands flew to the emergency access points on my chest rig. Protocol 7 Delta was the failsafe, the last resort. It was the system we installed only on suits designed to handle the most dangerous, telepathic, or high kinetic targets' full-body restraints. The idea wasn't to fight, but to survive incapacitation by locking everything down. I activated the switch just as the armored figure launched the second, focused wave of energy. Crack! Instead of my body being ripped apart or thrown, the outer layer of my suit immediately sealed, injecting a specialized, hardening ferrofluid into all flexible joints. My arms locked at my sides. My legs seized, rooting me to the ground. My helmet instantly deployed a dense, multi-layered energy shield that wasn't meant to stop blasts, but to diffuse them. The violet energy hit me. The shock was total, immediate, and utterly agonizing. It wasn't a blow. It was the entire universe attempting to shake my molecular structure apart. My lungs seized, the ferrofluid constricting my chest, preventing me from even gasping. I was a statue, a hunk of screaming flesh encased in immovable polymer, enduring a blast designed to disable a small tank. I felt the ground crack beneath my boots. The noise in my helmet was a high-pitched, intolerable shriek. The lights inside my visor flashed red, then black. But I stood, locked down, terrified, and screaming internally. But I did not fall. The shockwave dispersed, harmlessly hitting the trees behind me. The armored figure paused, momentarily thrown off by my resistance. That was all the Zurath family needed. They scrambled up the ramp, and with a terrible, tearing screech of stressed metal, the cargo skiff lifted off, disappearing instantly into the dense upper atmosphere, cloaking the moment it reached the cloud layer. The armored figure, my assailant, lowered his spear, staring at me. He had won the battle, securing the escape, but I was still standing. He took one step toward me, and that moment of hesitation, that instant of assessing the stationary, unmoving target, was his mistake. With the pressure off, the 7 Delta system automatically initiated the countermeasure. A low, penetrating frequency burst from my belt unit, designed not for the Zurath, but for the one thing we never expected. A human wearing a suit of Lathan tech. The frequency specifically targeted the proprietary energy signature of Lathan-made kinetic armor, overloading the shield generator. The black armor flared, violently, blindingly. It seized and cracked, and the figure collapsed with a sound like shattering glass and compressed air, the helmet bouncing away into the mud. Silence. The humid air immediately returned, heavier now with the smell of ozone and burnt earth. I stood there, still locked in the ferrofluid restraints, watching the wreckage. My internal systems began the painfully slow process of deactivating the 7 Delta lock. It took 1.5 minutes, an eternity, for the ferrofluid to liquefy and retreat, leaving my muscles shaking violently. When I could finally move, I dropped the kinetic spear immediately and stumbled forward, pulling off my shattered helmet. The armored figure, now twitching on the ground, was human. Shockingly. Absolutely human. Young. Early 20s, maybe. Short, dark hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. A face smeared with jungle grime. He was lean, corded with unexpected muscle, and his eyes, brown and intensely focused even in unconsciousness, were framed by long, dark lashes. "Harris! Danvers! Peterson!" I croaked, my throat raw. "Report!" Harris's voice was shaky but responsive. "Conscious, Agent Sharon. Broken ribs, ruptured eardrums, but alive. The other 2 are stabilized but need immediate extraction. What in the hell was that?" "That," I said, walking slowly toward the downed figure, "was a human, and he just helped a high-profile alien family escape our jurisdiction." I knelt, peeling the tight, metallic fragments of the black suit off his skin. Underneath the tactical armor, he was wearing simple civilian fatigues, heavily worn. I found no identification. The Zurath had been thorough. This was no random mercenary. This was personal. This was loyalty. The second phase of the mission began instantly. No rest, no debriefing. The black suit directive was always instantaneous. Assess the new threat, acquire the asset. The Lathan family was gone, but the one thing that mattered, the loose thread that could unravel our entire secrecy operation, was lying right here in the mud. We subdued him with a standard Class C neural dampener, loaded the team onto the emergency extraction vessel, and were back at the agency's secure facility in Rio de Janeiro within the hour. The interrogation room was cold, sterile, and unforgiving, a deliberate contrast to the humid chaos of the jungle. I sat across the polished metal table from him, Carlos. That was the name we had finally pulled from a fragmented financial record associated with the cocoa plant property. No last name, no traceable origin beyond an obscure orphanage record dating back 12 years. The Zurath had wiped his past completely. I had changed out of my ruined suit into my standard uniform, the impeccably tailored black suit, white shirt, and a neutral expression that masked the churning anxiety in my stomach. Carlos, stripped of his power armor, was wearing a simple grey jumpsuit, his wrists restrained by harmless-looking polymer cuffs. He was defiant, his posture rigid, his gaze locked firmly on mine. "You knew what we were," I stated, leaning forward, keeping my voice low and level. "You saw the suits, the ship. You knew we represented the authority of this planet." He didn't flinch. "I knew you represented a threat to my family." The simple, unadorned declaration hit me. Not the Zurath, but my family. That was the crucial difference. He wasn't a bodyguard, he was a son. This deepened the complication tenfold. Our rules of engagement were clear. Alien threats are handled with extreme prejudice. But the line was always blurred when it came to human collaborators, especially when the collaboration was rooted in love. "They are wanted criminals," I countered, pushing a digital dossier across the table. It displayed the Lathan government's official warrant: high treason, planetary disruption, death by public dismemberment. The graphic nature of the penalty was deliberate. It was psychological warfare. Carlos just looked at the horrific Lathan text, then lifted his chin. "They gave me a life. They took me from the streets when I was nothing. They taught me. They protected me. They are noble people caught in a civil war. Your government, your organization, is siding with the executioners." "We side with stability," I corrected sharply. "Their escape is an act of war, Carlos. The new Lathan regime is hypersensitive. If they believe we allowed a high-profile target to escape from our territory, they will initiate a punitive strike. Not against us, but against a defenseless, third-world nation we can't risk exposing to interstellar politics. We are the keepers of the peace, the secret peace." He shook his head, a wry, bitter smile touching his lips. "And what does the keeper of the peace do with the refugee's son?" I took a slow breath, adjusting my posture. This was where the black suit doctrine of eliminate and forget collided violently with my own personal moral compass. He was an incredibly effective asset, a walking, talking, highly trained link to the galaxy's darkest corners, and, most importantly, he had survived the kinetic blast of the Lathan spear and turned it off. I needed him. More than that, I wanted him. His intensity, his fierce loyalty, resonated with the part of me that had been buried under decades of protocol. I decided, in that moment, to break the rules that defined my entire existence. I was gambling my career, possibly my life, on the idea that loyalty could be leveraged, and that I could use the system to protect the innocent, both the human and the alien. "The Lathan government wants proof of death," I said, the words heavy and deliberate. "Not proof of capture, not proof of extradition, proof of death. They want a public spectacle, a deterrent to future rebels." Carlos's eyes narrowed, searching mine for a trick. And you just helped them escape," I continued, leaning closer, dropping my voice to a conspiratorial whisper that felt alien on my own tongue. "But they are still fugitives. The Lathan government will scour the galaxy for them. If we, the Black Suits, report a successful capture, the Lathan government will simply demand their return. If we report a successful elimination, a terrible, unavoidable accident during the arrest attempt, they get their public relations victory. They close the case, and they stop looking." I pushed a single, Small, black USB stick across the table. It contained a highly classified document. We will fake the Zurath family's death. A small, anonymous ship wreck off the coast of Patagonia. We'll fabricate biometric data, ship logs, everything needed to satisfy the Lathan forensics team. They get their closure, and your family gets the chance to truly vanish into the cosmos, untraceable, protected by an official interstellar death certificate. Carlos looked at the drive, then back at me. His intense brown eyes held a mixture of suspicion, disbelief, and a terrifying spark of hope. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice rough. "What's the price for protecting my family?" I met his gaze, my decision firm, my heart surprisingly calm. I paused for effect, letting the word hang there. I wanted the emotional hit, the sudden, sharp shift in the power dynamic. This was the moment of instant emotional payoff, the sudden, sharp change in destiny. You are the most highly trained, adaptable asset we've ever encountered on this planet. You have Lathan tech knowledge, you have human ingenuity, and you have demonstrated a terrifying effectiveness in combat. We need that. The black suits need that. You'll be Protocol Agent Gamma, under my direct supervision. I laid out the terms, keeping them ruthlessly simple. You work for us. You tell us everything about the Zurath movements, their contacts, their history, everything we need to make the fake out convincing and ensure Latha's stability. In return, I guarantee your family's freedom and safety. Their death will be the end of their struggle. Your loyalty, Carlos, is what I am buying. He stared at the black drive, then at my face. He studied my features, the tight, professional discipline that marked my every move, and then he seemed to look beyond it, seeing the exhausted, morally compromised agent underneath. "And if I refuse, then they escaped without our knowledge," I said, my voice hardening slightly, injecting the necessary element of threat. "And we are required to pursue them across the globe with full lethal intent to prevent the incident. The Lathan government will not stop, and neither will we. Your family will never be safe. You have one chance, Carlos. One moment to trade your loyalty to them for their actual freedom." He reached out slowly, picking up the USB drive. He didn't speak for a long time, the silence stretching and deepening, but his hand was steady, and his gaze never left mine. He was measuring the risk, the betrayal, and the immense reward. Finally, he nodded. A single, decisive movement. "I accept. But if I ever think you've betrayed them, if I think you've allowed them to be found, I will use every piece of Lathan technology I know to burn your organization to the ground. Starting with you." "Fair enough," I said, pushing back my chair. "Welcome to the black suits, Carlos. Let's start with the escape vessel's transponder codes. We have a planet to deceive, and less than 48 hours to do it." The next 36 hours were a blur of high-stakes logistics, technical wizardry, and continuous, tense proximity to Carlos. My life, my career, and the political stability of an entire continent now rested on the word of a human raised by aliens. I was the only person who knew the truth, that the Zurath family was alive and well, currently cloaked in an abandoned Lathan refueling depot outside the solar system, waiting for the all-clear. To the agency, Carlos was a captured asset, interrogated, flipped, and now working under duress to minimize the diplomatic damage caused by the escape. My office became our operational center, a pristine, high-tech space overlooking Rio de Janeiro, currently cluttered with schematics, holographic projections of Lathan ship components, and evidence of a massive, ongoing cover-up. The Zurath ship, the Aethel, was equipped with a dual-phase drive, Carlos explained, tracing a complex wiring diagram on the screen with a steady finger. He was sharp, frighteningly intelligent, and moved with a restless energy that betrayed his forced composure. "Phase 1, atmospheric cloaking, which you saw. Phase 2, the jump engine. It bypasses conventional hyperspace mapping. It's a short range, instantaneous displacement, a flicker. They used it to get clear of the solar system, but now they have to wait for the jump field to recharge. How long? I asked, pouring us both strong, black coffee, the human equivalent of a system shock. 6 weeks. They're effectively stranded at the depot until then. We have 6 weeks to make their disappearance look permanent. Our plan centered on 2 things. A derelict, unsalvageable merchant vessel we had seized years ago, and a remote, unforgiving sector of the South Atlantic. We pilot the merchant ship via drone, load it with the fabricated biometrics and the Athel's transponder signature, I explained, pointing to a grid map. We detonate it here, 50 miles off the coast of Patagonia. Deep water. The current and depth guarantee no wreckage is ever fully recovered, but the initial thermal and kinetic readings will confirm a catastrophic failure to the Lathan surveillance satellites. Carlos frowned. The Lathans are meticulous. They'll want the mother's data cylinder. It holds the key to the royal treasury. It's the entire reason the new government wants them back. We're simulating that, I said, walking to a secure vault and pulling out a small metallic object. A black suit forgery, indistinguishable from the real thing. This artifact has been chemically treated to mimic Lathan high-grade alloys, but contains a small thermite charge. We'll jettison it before the detonation. It will survive the blast, but the data storage capacity will be utterly melted by the thermite, leaving a proof of death artifact that is entirely useless as information. Carlos watched me work, his expression unreadable. I could feel his gaze, a constant, heavy presence that was both unnerving and exhilarating. He was assessing me, calculating my motives, my trustworthiness. It was the instant, necessary bond of spies, a mutual dependency forged under pressure. You're very good at this, he observed quietly. I've had a lot of practice cleaning up messes, I admitted, looking up at him. But this is the biggest cleanup I've ever attempted. I need absolute detail on the Zurath's communications. Who are they going to contact once they're safe? We need to preemptively intercept and scrub those files from our database. Carlos provided the contacts an ancient, benevolent alien race called Sarnathi, known for taking in galactic strays and detail the intricate, encrypted communication patterns. Working side by side, late into the night, the line between captor and asset, enemy and ally, evaporated. It was just 2 people executing a perfect lie to save a family. During a rare lull, I found myself watching him as he reviewed a complex trajectory map. The stark fluorescent light emphasized the lines of fatigue and concentration on his face. Why you, Carlos? I finally asked, the question escaping before I could censor it. Why did the Zurath family choose an orphan? You're human. You're disposable. He shrugged, but the movement was tense. They didn't choose a bodyguard. They chose a bridge. They needed someone who understood Earth, its culture, its markets, its dangers. They made me Lathan by teaching me their ways, but they left me human so I could interact with yours. They treated me better than any human ever did. He looked at me, his brown eyes suddenly vulnerable. I had a purpose. I had a family. You don't give that up. His fierce, unyielding devotion was magnetic. It was the purest form of loyalty, something I, a woman who had traded family for the anonymity and discipline of the black suits, envied fiercely. And now, I pressed gently, now your loyalty is divided. You're working for the people who hunted them. My loyalty is to their safety, he corrected instantly. The black suits are the only entity powerful enough to give them a permanent ticket out of this political mess. If working for you saves them, then I work for you. But I never forget why I'm here, Sharon. He used my name, the first time he had done so without a preceding title or tone of challenge. It was a subtle, instant connection, acknowledging that in this high-pressure crucible, we had established a relationship that transcended the standard agent-asset dynamic. It was personal. The day of the incident arrived. I stood on a secure military base in Chile, watching the drone-piloted merchant vessel, now a disguised ghost ship, take off, loaded with its false identities and the fake treasury drive. Carlos was beside me, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his new black suit-issued fatigues. He was technically an agent now, but he looked like a prisoner of war. "This feels wrong," he muttered, his gaze fixed on the dwindling light of the ship. "Like a double betrayal." "It's the greatest act of loyalty you could perform," I countered, placing a hand lightly on his forearm. The warmth of his skin was immediate, surprising. "You're not betraying them to us. You're leveraging us to guarantee their survival. You gave up your freedom so they could have theirs." I felt an immediate surge of protectiveness toward him. He was a weapon, yes, but he was also a wounded, deeply moral person who had been forced into an impossible choice. My job now wasn't just to manage the asset, but to manage his conscience. The command came in over the comms. "Initiating detonation sequence. 5, 4, 3. I squeezed his arm lightly, a silent signal of support. 2, 1. A brilliant, silent flash of light erupted hundreds of miles away over the ocean, visible only as a faint, distant shimmer in the night sky, followed microseconds later by a massive, perfectly calibrated thermal signature that screamed catastrophic engine failure across the satellite network. Confirmed thermal bloom. Simulated Lathan transponder signature extinguished. Mission parameters met. The tech reported crisply. The Zurath family is officially deceased. Carlos let out a long, ragged breath, the tension leaving his body in a visible wave. He looked at me, the hope that had flickered in his eyes during the interrogation now blazing with gratitude and relief. It was a potent, addictive emotion. I had saved his family, and in doing so, I had instantly secured a bond of fierce, unyielding loyalty from him, a loyalty now aimed squarely at me. "It's done," I confirmed, pulling my hand away, though the residual warmth lingered on my palm. "Now, the real work begins. We have to sell the lie to the Lathans." The agency immediately initiated the diplomatic procedure. We sent a formal, heavily coded communication to the Lathan government. Fugitives apprehended. Attempted escape resulted in catastrophic loss of life. Wreckage non-recoverable. All high-value assets destroyed. The Lathans, true to form, responded with demands for physical evidence. This was where Carlos became truly indispensable. He knew exactly what they would be looking for. "Their forensics team will use a specific low-band atmospheric scan for residual Lathan radiation signatures," he explained, sitting across from me in my office, now reviewing Lathan diplomatic protocols. "It's a subtle probe, designed to see if we're hiding a capture. We need to flood the area with a counter-frequency signature that mimics Lathan drive decay, the final dying gasp of the Aethel's engine." Working with him was a revelation. We were a perfect, high-speed, symbiotic machine. He provided the alien insight. I provided the human infrastructure and political maneuvering. He worked with a fierce concentration, fueled by the immediate reward of protecting his family. I found myself relying on him not just for technical data, but for insight. He saw the world, both Earth and the cosmos, through a dual lens that was invaluable. He could predict alien motivations and human reactions with chilling accuracy. Our professional proximity soon bled into the personal. We were constantly together, working 15-hour days, fueled by adrenaline and a shared secret. We started having dinner in my secured apartment, not a date, just the necessity of working, eating quick, simple meals while discussing planetary defense strategies. One evening, I watched him clean his black suit-issue kinetic rifle, his movements precise and familiar. "You're trained with this?" I asked, surprised. "I thought you only knew Lathan tech." "The Zurath prepared for everything," he said, not looking up. "They taught me human self-defense, human language, human science. They understood that to survive on Earth, I had to be better than human. They trained me to use whatever weapon was available. He looked up then, meeting my eyes. They raised me to be their perfect weapon, Sharon. That's what I am. And now, I'm your weapon. And so, the intensity of his stare, the casual declaration of his function, was staggering. It felt like a gauntlet had been thrown, an invitation to acknowledge the instant, powerful connection that had formed between us. I don't want a weapon, Carlos, I said, crossing the room to stand behind him, resting my hands lightly on his shoulders. He tensed immediately, surprised by the sudden, intimate contact. I want a partner. You saved them, not the black suits. You are my asset, but you are also the only person on this planet who knows the true cost of our operation. The only person I can talk to. My fingers kneaded the tight muscles in his neck. The exhaustion and stress of the last 72 hours melted slightly under my touch. This was the moment of instant emotional fulfillment I realized I needed. The breaking of the impenetrable solitude that had defined my life as a black suit. He slowly put the rifle down and leaned back, his head resting against my stomach. I am your partner, he murmured, his voice low and rich. But you should never forget the training. If you get too close to the weapon, it might fire. I smiled. A genuine, rare thing. I'm betting that's exactly what I need. Over the next 6 weeks, Carlos settled into his new role with devastating efficiency. He was integrated into the Black Suits Protocol Division, a tiny, highly classified team I ran, dedicated to preemptive damage control and extraterrestrial diplomacy. His first major task was identifying and neutralizing a Lathan surveillance probe that had been secretly placed in Earth's orbit years ago. It's a passive listener, designed to report back on ambient Lathan radiation levels, Carlos explained, showing me the complex schematics. If we had just let the Zurath ship go, this probe would have reported the flicker jump, and Latha would have known they were alive. And now? Now it reports nothing, except the thermal signature of the crash. But we can't just turn it off. Latha will notice the silence. We have to feed it. Carlos proposed a stunningly audacious plan. Create a localized, repeatable electromagnetic pulse that would mimic the sound of a dying Lathan engine drive, and feed it into the probe's sensor array for the next 2 months. A ghost frequency, broadcasting the death of the Aethel on a continuous loop, ensuring Latha's government was satisfied their execution order had been fulfilled. You're suggesting we broadcast a lie into the void for 60 days straight, I marveled, watching him program the frequency generator. It's the most authentic way to fake a persistent, unavoidable system failure, he shrugged. It's what they expect to see. His ability to think like the enemy his former people was chilling. He had fully embraced the black suit ethos of deception and secrecy, but for his own profoundly personal reasons. As the weeks passed, our partnership deepened into something undeniable. The intense focus of the work, the shared danger, and the mutual secret created a bubble around us. We moved through the agency like a unit, my icy professionalism balanced by his quiet, coiled intensity. I realized I was changing. I, who had always viewed my work with cold, detached precision, was now making decisions colored by Carlos's presence. I found myself anticipating his needs, adjusting my schedule to match his, and, most tellingly, starting to care more about protecting him than protecting the protocol. One night, the stress finally broke. We had successfully fooled the Lathan forensics team, who had been dispatched to the fake crash site and, finding the melted treasury drive and the consistent ghost frequency, had returned to Latha satisfied. The mission was officially a success. The Zurath was safe, and Earth was politically stable. Carlos and I were alone in my office, the city lights of Rio glittering below us, the silence deafening after weeks of constant action. He leaned against the window, gazing out at the human world he had been raised to defend against its own ignorance. They made it, he whispered, a tremor in his voice. The Sarnathi confirmed contact. They are safe. It's over. I walked up behind him, placing my hands on his waist. Not over, Carlos. Just the beginning. He turned, the sudden intimacy a palpable heat between us. His brown eyes were swimming with an emotion I couldn't name: relief, guilt, exhaustion, and, intensely, desire. I gave up everything for them, he said, his voice raw. My past, my identity, my future with them. And now, I have nothing left but this connection to the woman who caught me. You didn't give up everything, I countered, sliding my hands up to cup his face. You traded it for something real. You traded a lie for a truth. The payoff of weeks of pent-up tension and shared danger. I didn't want a long, complicated courtship. I wanted the immediate, necessary connection that had been building since I saw him lying helpless in the mud. I pulled him in and kissed him a kiss that was desperate, demanding, and utterly fulfilling. It was the acknowledgement of the pact we had made, the merging of the agent and the asset, the captor and the captive. His hands wrapped around my back, pulling me tight against his trained, hard body. The discipline I had cultivated for years cracked wide open, replaced by a sudden, violent need for human connection. The black suits had taught me how to save the world, but Carlos had taught me why I needed to be saved from my own solitary existence. Life as Protocol Agent Gamma and his handler was an ongoing tightrope walk. Our relationship, professional and intensely personal, was confined to the secure bubble of the agency. Outside those walls, Carlos was a ghost, a legend the black suits had created to explain the escape of the Zurath. Inside, he was my constant, my secret, my anchor. The black suits, however, are a relentless machine. Now that the Zurath case was closed, they moved instantly to the next crisis. A new, more dangerous assignment landed on my desk, tracking a rogue scientist who had stolen Lathan genetic material, attempting to create human-alien hybrids. This was a classic, high-stakes hunt that required Carlos's unique skill set. The genetic material is destabilizing, Carlos analyzed, reviewing the data with a frown. It will kill the host in weeks, but before that, it will activate the host's latent aggression and mimic Lathan's psychic shielding. The target is a walking time bomb. Was what is an I today, and of Karen's. The target, Dr. Siobhan Vance, was hiding in a network of underground labs across Europe. Our mission became a high-speed chase from Berlin to Prague, leveraging Carlos's knowledge of Lathan's surveillance countermeasures and his ruthless efficiency in the field. During a tense confrontation in a deserted Prague metro tunnel, Vance activated a localized sonic weapon, designed to scramble human brain activity. I staggered, my own systems failing, but Carlos, whose Lathan training had prepared him for higher-frequency psychic attacks, was only temporarily stunned. "Sharon!" he yelled, fighting the ringing in his ears. He grabbed me, pulling me behind a heavy concrete pillar. "I can't think," I gasped, clutching my head. "It's overloading my neural dampeners." Carlos didn't hesitate. He pulled the standard-issue combat knife from my belt, plunged it into the concrete wall, and used the metal-on-metal friction to create a localized, counter-frequency shriek. The sonic weapon sputtered and died. He looked at me, his eyes wide with adrenaline and concern. "Are you hurt?" "No," I whispered, shaken. "You saved me. Again." The dynamic had flipped completely. I, the handler, was now dependent on him, the asset. It wasn't just emotional. It was absolutely necessary for survival. We captured Vance, retrieving the stolen genetic material and neutralizing the threat. As we flew back to Rio, the immediate danger over Carlos was silent, staring out the window at the endless cloud cover. "You didn't have to do that," I finally said, touching his hand. "Yes, I did," he replied simply, turning his intense gaze on me. The Zurath family taught me loyalty above all else. You protected them. Now, you are my priority. I will not lose you to a sonic frequency or an angry scientist. His loyalty was a concrete thing, a shield, and a weapon, fierce, unyielding, and directed entirely at me. It was the instant, perfect, emotional return on the gamble I had taken. What about the Lathan armor you wore? I asked, changing the subject, wanting to understand every facet of the man who now defined my life. Can you rebuild it? He smiled, a rare, breathtaking flash of genuine amusement. The armor was just an energy shell. The real tech was in the spear. It was a projection device, Sharon, but it was also a data core. It holds the final, complete history of the Zurath lineage. I kept it safe. He pulled a small, innocuous memory stick from a hidden compartment in his boot, the actual core of the weapon I had neutralized in the jungle. This is everything the Lathan government wanted, the full, unedited history of the royal family, the true reason for the rebellion, and the evidence that proves the new regime are the criminals, not the Zurath. It was the ultimate blackmail material. The key to the interstellar secret war, now resting in the hands of a human agent who answered only to me. Why show me this? I asked, my heart pounding a steady rhythm against my ribs. Because you deserve the truth, he said, his voice dropping low, his eyes locked on mine. You broke protocol for me. I broke the final code for you. We are in this together, Sharon. And now, we don't just serve the black suit's stability. We serve our own. I took the memory stick, its cold metal a stark contrast to the heat of his gaze. The immediate acquisition of power and total mutual trust. I had the perfect weapon, the perfect partner, and the ultimate secret. My life, once sterile and bound by rules, was now saturated with purpose, danger, and a fierce, necessary love. The black suits had no idea the extent of the political powder keg they had just welcomed into their ranks, and I, Agent Sharon, the handler, wouldn't have it any other way. The secret had been secured, the family saved, and the price paid in full. The next chapter, a clandestine war against the universe's injustices, would be fought on our terms. The Lathan government, satisfied with the crash report and the continuous ghost frequency broadcast, officially closed the Zurath case. The political incident was averted, and the black suits received high praise from the secretive Interplanetary Stability Commission. For everyone else in the agency, it was a major victory. For Carlos and me, it was the start of an independent operation within the operation, a clandestine layer dedicated to protecting the secrets we had manufactured. My next promotion was instantaneous and expected. I was elevated to Director of Protocol Operations, giving me authority over all cross-reference data and high-value alien assets. The promotion was a direct result of my successful handling of the Zurath incident, and it put me in the perfect position to protect Carlos and leverage the Lathan data core. Carlos, now officially my chief strategic analyst, moved into the apartment next door, officially to maintain high operational availability, but unofficially to maintain the intense, necessary proximity of our relationship. The agency, trusting my judgment implicitly, gave us a new, high-priority mission, monitoring a sudden surge of unauthorized, low-frequency data packets originating from a remote region in the Siberian Arctic. The data was clearly Lathan in origin, but highly encrypted and erratic. It's a burst transmission, a distress signal, but it's badly mangled. Carlos explained, tracing the signal's origin point on the holographic globe in our secure lab. He was wearing his tailored black suit uniform now, the material a perfect match for mine, though his intensity made the uniform look more like a suit of combat armor. A distress signal from whom? I asked, leaning over the projection, the scent of his cologne, a faint, clean citrus, I had grown addicted to filling my senses. Not the Zurath, he confirmed immediately, shaking his head. The Sarnathi encryption is far more stable. This is from the Lathan Navy, but it's a specific, deep-level encryption used only by covert reconnaissance forces. Lathan recon on Earth? Why? The Zurath case is closed. Carlos's expression darkened. A new threat. The Zurath had enemies beyond the current government. Rival factions who wanted the royal line extinguished, but for different, much darker reasons. They believed the Zurath possessed an ancient Lathan weapon, a relic that could destabilize the entire Lathan galaxy. The new government wanted the Zurath for political gain. These people want the Zurath dead to acquire the weapon. I felt the blood run cold. Does the Zurath family possess this weapon? Carlos hesitated, his eyes flicking to the data core. He had retrieved the core of the kinetic sphere, which was currently locked in my personal safe. The Zurath father claimed it was a myth, a political scare tactic. But the data core contains the entire history. We have to check. We spent the next 12 hours immersed in the data core's history logs. The Lathan language was beautiful, complex, and deadly. Carlos, translating the deep historical records, uncovered the truth. The Zurath family did possess a relic. Not a weapon of mass destruction, but a key, a complex, bio-encoded data cipher that could unlock the ancient, sealed defense systems of the original Lathan homeworld, making it invulnerable to outside attack. A relic of immense strategic value, not offensive. The new government knew about the cipher, Carlos stated, his voice tight. But the rebel faction, the one sending this distress signal from Siberia, believed it was an ancient weapon. They wanted to use the Zurath to find it, then kill them, and use it to carve out their own empire. And the Zurath didn't have it with them? No, Carlos confirmed, relief washing over his face. The cipher was left behind, locked in the family vault on Latha. But the key to the vault is encoded in the DNA of the Zurath children. That's why the enemies wanted them alive, even momentarily, to extract the key. The Siberian distress signal wasn't about the Zurath escape. It was a signal from a rival faction's deep cover reconnaissance team, trapped on Earth, likely having failed to locate the family and the children before the main Black Suits raid. We go to Siberia, I said, rising instantly. We find that team, we neutralize them, and we ensure the Lathan civil war stays the hell off our planet. And we keep the data core secret. No one, not even the director, knows about the cipher. That knowledge is our protection, Carlos. The mission was high stakes and immediate. We boarded a specialized, cloaked VTOL craft, flying non-stop to the desolate Arctic expanse. Siberia was the absolute opposite of the Brazilian jungle. It was a freezing, silent world of blinding white and endless, sharp cold. We landed near the coordinates of the distress signal, a collapsed, frozen bunker dating back to the Soviet era. We moved on snowmobiles, covered in thermal-reflecting Arctic gear. Carlos was focused, his body radiating a professional chill that matched the landscape. 2 lifeforms inside, he reported, checking his Lathan tech sensor array. Weak, but alive. They've been here for months, likely surviving on deep freeze rations. They won't be expecting us. We breached the sealed entrance, dropping into a narrow, dimly lit corridor that smelled of stale air and ozone. The 2 Lathan recon agents were huddled in a control room, their skin pale, their uniforms ragged. They were not sleek, elegant Zurath. They were soldiers hard, ruthless, and desperate. Their uniforms bore the insignia of the Ascendant Fleet, the faction that believed in the mythical weapon. As soon as they saw our black suits, they reacted instantly, their eyes lighting up with savage, resigned hatred. One lunged for a console, the other for a heavy kinetic rifle. "Stop!" I ordered, raising my own, non-lethal pulse weapon. Carlos didn't wait for the order. He moved with a devastating, instant finality. He didn't fire. He used his body as a weapon, tackling the Lathan agent, going for the console. It was a blur of human speed and Lathan-trained efficiency. He locked the agent's arm, snapping the wrist, and simultaneously slammed the agent's head against the metal console, neutralizing him instantly. I handled the second agent, firing a high-frequency pulse that momentarily locked his muscles, allowing me to secure the kinetic rifle. The two agents were subdued, but not before the first one, now convulsing on the ground, managed to shout a single, guttural word in Lathan. Carlos froze. His face went pale beneath the tactical hood. "What did he say?" I demanded, securing the prisoners with flex cuffs. Carlos looked down at the unconscious Lathan agent, his expression troubled. He said, "The key is with the children. They didn't know the Zurath were dead, Sharon. They still think the family is on Earth. They were waiting for confirmation of the family's location before sending a retrieval team." My heart sank. The Lathan government was fooled, but the deeper, more dangerous faction was still actively hunting. Our perfect lie was only half effective. The ultimate enemy still believed the Zurath were a threat on Earth. "We need to clean the site, wipe the entire bunker's existence from the records, and transport these two back to Rio for deep interrogation," I said, my voice hardening with resolve. "We have to find out what they know and who they're reporting to." Carlos nodded, his gaze meeting mine, the shared danger immediately reinforcing our bond. "We tell the agency that they were the escapees, the Zurath family themselves, and that they died in a structural collapse during the arrest. It cleans the slate completely. It's the only way to close the door on the Zurath case for good." It was another layer of deception, another necessary lie to protect the innocents light years away. I trusted Carlos implicitly to navigate this ethical minefield. He was the one who had sacrificed his life to save theirs, and that made his judgment the only one I truly relied on. We spent the next 48 hours in the Arctic, meticulous in our cover-up, before flying the two Lathan prisoners, heavily sedated, back to our secure facility. The interrogation of the Lathan agents was brutal but necessary, conducted by Carlos and me using specialized black suit neuroreaders that could extract information without causing permanent damage, mostly. Carlos was a ruthless interrogator. He didn't physically hurt them, but his intimate knowledge of Lathan psychology, honor, and fear was devastating. He knew exactly what codes to press. Within 2 days, we had the answer. The Ascendant Fleet faction had a small, highly sophisticated reconnaissance vessel hidden in a deep-sea trench off the coast of Australia, monitoring the Pacific Rim for anomalies. It was a listening post, capable of relaying information instantly to the Ascendant Fleet's main command in the Lathan territory. It was their last active link to Earth. "If they see us, they report immediately," Carlos warned, reviewing the schematics of the sub-vessel. "If they don't report, the Ascendant Fleet knows they've been compromised and sends a warship. We take it out silently," I decided. "No trace, no report. We make the vessel disappear. We use the agency's deep-sea drone fleet, the Ares model. Fully cloaked, heavily armored. The mission demanded that Carlos and I operate the deep-sea drones personally from a secure command center. We spent the next week in a windowless room, miles beneath the Black Suit's main headquarters, maneuvering highly specialized equipment. The pressure was immense. The fate of the Zurath family, and potentially the stability of an entire star system, rested on our ability to quietly neutralize a single, high-tech submarine. During a tense moment, as Carlos was navigating the drone through a complex geothermal vent near the target, the Lathan sub sent out an unexpected, high-frequency ping, a check-in. "They're running an unscheduled diagnostic," Carlos hissed, his face tight with concentration. "We have seconds to abort or hide, or they see our signature." I reacted instantly, overriding the drone's manual controls and activating a localized electromagnetic shroud. The drone went completely dark, its signal scattering harmlessly into the ocean noise. The Lathan sub completed its diagnostic, reported all clear to its command, and returned to passive mode. Carlos slowly let out a breath, turning to face me. Our eyes met across the console. The adrenaline was a shockwave between us. "That was dangerously fast, Sharon," he said, his voice husky. "I learned to anticipate the failure mode," I replied, the heat of the moment overwhelming the professionalism. "I knew what you needed before you asked for it." He pushed away from the console, rounding the small command station and stopping directly in front of me. He didn't speak, but the intensity in his gaze was a language unto itself. This was the raw, necessary desire that had been the foundation of our bond, the high-stakes passion born of shared secrets and mutual survival. He reached out, his hand cupping my cheek, his thumb gently stroking my jawline. "You are terrifyingly efficient," he murmured, "and you are the only person who has ever truly protected me." I leaned into his touch, my hands resting on his chest, feeling the steady, rapid beat of his heart. "And you are the only one who has ever made me feel alive, Carlos. Fully, completely alive." He kissed me then, right there, in the sterile, air-conditioned silence of the command bunker. A kiss that was a declaration, a promise, and a reaffirmation of the instant, necessary connection that defined our existence. We neutralized the Lathan sub that night, using a high-yield acoustic weapon disguised as a geological anomaly. The vessel disappeared without a trace, its last active line to Earth severed forever. The mission was a complete success. The Lathan government was deceived, the rival faction was neutralized, and the Zurath family, deep in the sanctuary of the Sarnathi, was finally, truly safe. We had created a perfect lie, executed with ruthless efficiency. We were the handlers of the galaxy's secrets, and our loyalty to each other was the only protocol that truly mattered. My final report was meticulous, detailing the destruction of the rival Lathan faction and confirming the death of the Zurath family in the initial crash. I used the Zurath data core to fabricate a complex, false history of the Ascendant Fleet's failure, ensuring that the Black Suit's official records were utterly impenetrable. Carlos sat across from me in my office as I finalized the paperwork, the sun setting over the Brazilian coastline, painting the sky in colors too beautiful for the deadly games we played. He was reading a physical book, a classic, forgotten novel of human history, a quiet reminder of the world he had fought so hard to belong to. "It's done," I said, signing the last document with a flourish. "The Zurath family is a historical footnote. The Lathan case is permanently closed." Carlos looked up, his face relaxed, the constant tension finally gone. "And now?" I smiled, a slow, genuine smile that felt earned. "Now, we run protocol operations. We leverage the Lathan data core to preemptively identify galactic threats. We use your knowledge to keep Earth safe, but we do it on our terms. We build our own safety, Carlos." I stood and walked over to him, leaning down and kissing him gently on the forehead. "You broke protocol, and you saved a family. I broke protocol, and I gained everything I never knew I wanted. The price was worth it." He closed the book, setting it aside, and took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. "You gave me a life, Sharon, a life where I am useful, where I am loved, and where I can protect the innocent, both alien and human. My loyalty is yours." We were two entities, fused by deception and necessity, operating in the high-speed, high-stakes world of interstellar espionage. The Black Suits thought they had flipped an asset, but in reality, they had unleashed a partnership based on an unbreakable, instantaneous bond of love and shared secrecy. Total control over the narrative, and total reliance on each other. And in the world of galactic politics, that was the most dangerous and most rewarding power of all. The end.
If you enjoyed this quick escape, hit the subscribe button for new stories twice a week. Until then, I'll see you at the next flip of the pages.